Today I'm going to talk about the supreme trinity of monsters, created by God, so powerful that only God himself can kill them. Leviathan of the waters, Behemoth of the earth, and Ziz of the air. Leviathan is possibly the most famous creature in the Bible, being the water dragon of Judeo-Christian mythology, since basically every mythology has a monstrous mythological serpent. And usually this serpent is always facing a very powerful god, like Amon Gander facing Thor and Typhon facing Zeus. Because yes, Typhon fits as a serpent since he has legs and several serpent heads on his body. Well, that being the case, Judeo-Christian mythology also has a very powerful serpent that might be the most powerful creature in the Bible, Leviathan. And you there, don't forget to leave a powerful like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel because it helps me a lot, okay? If possible, hype the video up and share it. And take a look at the pinned comment. Leviathan can be translated from Hebrew as meaning coiled, twisted, or even nowadays as whale. And it's a gigantic sea creature that appears in parts of the Old Testament. Of course, just like many creatures in the Bible, Leviathan can indeed be seen as a metaphor, both in Judaism and Christianity. However, these two religions see Leviathan in very different ways. For some, it symbolizes God's power and creativity. Others view it as a demonic creature. Outside the religious field, the term Leviathan also appears and can be used to refer to any large sea creature, especially whales. The descriptions of Leviathan change depending on the source, but in general, they all agree on its colossal size. Some say it resembles a whale with a thick cylindrical body and fins. Others describe it as something closer to a dragon. In fact, the Old Testament was translated into Greek using the name dragon. In this case, it has a thinner body covered in scales like armor with sharp claws, razor-sharp teeth, and even the ability to spit fire. Some believe Leviathan, mentioned multiple times in the Bible, could be a crocodile. Some of these appearances are in Psalms, like in this passage. O Lord, how varied are your works! You made all things with wisdom. The earth is full of your riches. This vast sea contains innumerable creatures, both small and large. There the ships go, and Leviathan, which you formed to frolic there. They all wait for you to give them their food at the proper time. But the most interesting part of Psalms is this one. Yet God has been my king from ancient times. Working salvation in the midst of the earth, you divided the sea by your strength and crushed the heads of the sea monsters. You broke the heads of Leviathan in pieces and gave him as food to the people of the wilderness. You opened the fountain and stream and dried up mighty rivers. The day and night are yours. You prepared the light and the sun. You established all the boundaries of the earth. Summer and winter, you formed them. I say that this passage is the most interesting because it draws a parallel with the stories from other mythologies that probably inspired the story of the biblical Leviathan. The first one is related to the Baal cycle from Canaanite mythology. In this tale, Baal fought a legendary snake sent by Yam, the god of the seas. This serpent had 7 heads, and similarly, Leviathan does too in that passage. Another story that draws a parallel is that of the Mesopotamian primordial goddess Tiamat, whom the god Marduk defeated and used her body to form the earth as we know it. Very similar to what the passage says, establishing all the boundaries of the earth. In fact, I have a video telling these two stories here on the channel, which I'll link in the card and description. The book of Job, chapter 41, provides the most detailed description of Leviathan, portraying him with several impressive characteristics. And it has super-resistant scales, described as shields firmly joined together, so close that no air passes between them. Its eyes shine in the first rays of the morning. Its mouth is full of fearsome teeth. It spits fire and releases smoke. From its mouth come embers, sparks of fire crackle. Smoke comes out of its nostrils like a boiling pot. Its neck is pure strength. In its neck dwells such great strength that fear goes before it. Its skin is practically impenetrable. Swords cannot wound it, nor spear, nor arrow, nor dart. It treats iron like straw and bronze like rotten wood. And it also leaves a luminous trail in the water. It leaves behind a shining trail, as if the abyss had white hair. Well, according to the passage from Isaiah, it says that Leviathan will fall only by the hands, or rather by the sword, of God himself. But Judaism has another idea of how Leviathan will meet its end, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, in Islam, the third Abrahamic religion, there is no presence of Leviathan. But in Arab mythology, we have a somewhat similar figure, which is Falak. Well, this Falak, which is also a serpent, appears in the stories of 1001 Nights. They say that Falak lives in an abyss of fire that lies below Mahamuti, which is a giant fish there. This place is full of flames, and Falak lives suffering and writhing, waiting for the day when it can finally devour everything that exists. The only thing that prevents Falak from doing this is the fear it has of Allah and all his power. According to the Midrash Rabbah, a significant detail is added about Leviathan in Judaism. According to the text, God originally created a male and female pair of Leviathans. But out of fear of their power and that they might reproduce, he ended up killing the female and kept her for a banquet for the righteous, leaving the male alive until the end of times. Now, in Catholicism during the medieval age, Leviathan was classified as a demon by the church, representing the sin of envy, being one of the 7 princes of hell. If Leviathan rules the seas, we have his opposite, the greatest monster of the Bible on land, Behemoth. Unlike Leviathan, which has many similar creatures in other mythologies, Behemoth does not. The closest thing I can remember is Fenrir from Norse mythology, who ends up being the largest creature on land, while Jormungandr ends up being the largest in the sea. But as you will see in the description of Behemoth in the book of Job, its characteristics don't match Fenrir's at all. The creature is simply described as being God's masterpiece. Behold now the Behemoth, which I made along with you, which eats grass like an ox. Behold, its strength is in its loins, and its power is in the muscles of its belly. When it wishes, it moves its tail like a cedar. The sinews of its thighs are intertwined. Its bones are like tubes of bronze, and its skeleton is like bars of iron. And it is the masterpiece of God's ways. He who made it provided it with his sword. Truly the mountains provide it with pasture, where all the animals of the field play. It lies under the shady trees, hidden among the reeds and in the mud. The shady trees cover it with their shadow, the willows by the stream surround it. Behold, a river overflows, and it is not alarmed. Even if the Jordan rises up to its mouth, can anyone capture it while watching, or pierce its nose with snares? Many believe Behemoth could be a lion, elephant, ox, dinosaur, or more sensibly, a hippopotamus, the opposite of Leviathan, considered a crocodile. But just as many say that Leviathan can be a metaphor for the power of God, the same thing happens here with Behemoth. He is basically God giving his vision to Job, showing the extent of his powers, and that he, like many men, does not know many things. Although the Bible does not make it very clear what Behemoth's real purpose in the world is, in Judaism we have a very specific one for him. The Midrash Rabbah describes a battle that would take place at the end of the world between him and Leviathan. Leviathan and Behemoth, or Shor-Rabor, the wild ox at the end of times, these 2 primordial creatures, one marine and the other terrestrial, will fight each other and kill each other, preparing their meat for the messianic banquet. This battle represents the final resolution of the conflict between the primordial forces of creation. They will entwine and fight each other. Behemoth will use its horns to attack with force, and Leviathan will leap to face it with its fins, with all its power. Then their creator will approach them, and his powerful sword will end up killing them both. Then, using the beautiful skin of Leviathan, God will make a shelter for the righteous who will eat the flesh of Behemoth. The flesh of Leviathan will be served as well, and everyone will eat with great joy. According to Agada, the strength of Behemoth reaches its peak at the summer solstice of each solar year, around June 21st. At that time of year, Behemoth lets out a loud roar that makes all the animals tremble with fear, making them less fierce for the entire year. As a result, the weak animals live safely out of reach of the beasts. This mythical phenomenon is shown as an example of mercy and divine kindness. Without the roar of Behemoth, the animals would become wilder and fiercer, and would go around killing each other and even humans. In the book of Enoch, he appears as male, while Leviathan ends up being female. Two monsters will be served as food that day. The female monster Leviathan dwells in the sea's depths above the water springs, and the male monster, whose name is Behemoth, who moves in his belly in the invisible desert, whose name was Dutian, to the east of the garden, where the chosen and the righteous will dwell, where he received it from my ancestor, from Adam, the first of men whom the Lord God made. In Islam, there isn't exactly a behemoth, but there is Bahamut, which is simply a fish that carries the earth on its back. Well, last but not least, we have a representative of the air, which in this case would be the giant bird called Ziz. Ziz is a huge bird. The top of its head reaches the skies, while its ankles touch the ground. The span of its wings is equally huge, and it was said to have a distance between the earth and the sky. The colossal creature's wing beats not only obscured the sky, but also altered wind patterns. Just like Leviathan, unlike Behemoth, we have some representatives in other mythologies that may have inspired this giant bird from the Bible. Well, the first one would be the rock bird, also known as the rook bird, which comes from Arab and Persian mythology. It is so big that it could capture and eat elephants. The story appears in 1001 Arabian Nights and gained popularity in Sinbad the Sailor's Tale, where it inadvertently saves him from a shipwreck. Another one is Garuda from Hinduism, who would be somewhat of a lesser deity in Hindu mythology and is also present in Buddhism and Jainism. He would be the mount or vahana of the god Vishnu, being a symbol of impetuous strength, speed, and martial skill. Garuda is usually depicted as an eagle or in his anthropomorphic form, which has characteristics of both a man and a bird. And in that form, Garuda can be depicted as having 2 or 4 arms. And he has various ornaments like earrings, anklets, bracelets, and mostly accessories made of snakes. In his hands, he carries emblems of Vishnu, although he can also appear with empty hands. When Vishnu is sitting on top of Garuda, 2 of his arms end up serving as supports for the god's feet. The 2 main ones are Anzu, a huge winged creature from Mesopotamian mythology, servant of the god Enlil. In some sources, Anzu is considered half demonic and half divine, with both sinister and kind aspects. In Sumerian mythology, he would be a trickster-like mythological creature that plays tricks, but he was also seen as being a bird or a storm dragon. Another bird would be the Simurgh, which was considered a purifier of the earth and waters and consequently granted fertility. This creature symbolized the connection between sky and earth, acting as a mediator and messenger. Its nest was on Mount Galcarina. The Ziz, a bird from the Bible, could also be called Henaim due to its musical heavenly voice. It could also be called Sequel, or the seer, because of its connection with the regions of the sky. It's also called son of the nest since it creates birds and fowl without eggs. And they break the shells without being incubated. The Ziz, Leviathan, and Behemoth form the triad of Jewish monsters. Behemoth represents the land, Leviathan the sea, and Ziz the air. The 3 figures are very traditional in Jewish handicraft decoration, and according to some legends, it is destined to be served as the main dish at the Messianic banquet, along with Behemoth and Leviathan. Ziz is not clearly mentioned in the Bible as a creature, but its name does appear there. Tomorrow you will face them as they come up by the ascent of Ziz. You will find them at the end of the valley in front of the wilderness of Jeruel. Well, some still say that Ziz could be a Teratornis, which is a distinct genus of enormous North American birds of prey. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share. Let us know in the comments which of the 3 creatures would make a better pet for you. Behemoth, Leviathan, or Ziz? Thanks, bye.